is one of my favorite topics that I've ever done a live stream about. And what I'm talking about today is using pop culture as a way to keep lines of communication open during this time of political toxicity and extremism. So what I've noticed right now is that there's this idea, I think, in the Republican Party that we must just keep hitting on the extreme level, pointing out the craziness with those 4 women in Congress, and that's true. But one thing we could be doing is using pop culture as a way to keep lines of communication open. I'm going to tell you a little story. So every Monday, I live post about The Bachelorette on my Instagram story. And recently, a couple people who followed me have said, why do you do that? That's not why we follow you. That's not how you got your following. It's not political. And my answer to them is that I know quite a few people who I went to high school with, or just people, young people who have found me through social media, follow me. And they follow me not just because of politics, but because they know me or they like my other content. And so that I know that even if I'm just posting about The Bachelorette and that's why they're following me, it increases their chances of seeing some conservative material in their feed. I might be the only person they follow whatsoever that does anything conservative, that's involved in any conservative politics. And if they're following me because of The Bachelorette or because of music that I posted or baking, it's going to give them the chance to see conservative material, to see a conservative perspective on things. And that's very important. And recently, there's been one girl who went to high school with who's a very, very diehard liberal, who was following me because of The Bachelorette, and we would talk about it. And recently I saw her like a conservative post, and I said, why? And she said, well, I've been following you for a while, and some of the things you say make sense. This is what I mean by using pop culture to keep the lines of communication open. The Republican Party does not understand why celebrities and things like that are important. For instance, after American Idol, which was a huge deal this year, everyone was watching it for whoever they were rooting for. I thought that Laine Hardy, who was the winner, who's a country singer, die-hard country boy, should have been invited to the White House because it would have given President Trump some fluff. It would have allowed him to keep those lines of communication open with voters who might really support Laine Hardy and our country people but aren't die-hard Trump supporters. He needs a level of fluff to cushion all of this extremism stuff. That's typically what the First Lady is used for, but the problem is the media won't allow Melania Trump to really serve as First Lady. They won't give her the same access to the people of this country that the previous First Ladies have gotten. By using pop culture, we keep a line of communication open in very toxic political times. I think that we are underestimating how much people can agree with us on things if they're not Republicans or conservatives. By using pop culture, by talking about shows on HGTV, by having the First Lady talk about like Chip and Joanna Gaines or talk about people like that, it gives people who may not particularly love Trump an ability to say, well, there are people in his administration who I like. There are people who like the same things that I like. Democrats understand this. They understand how important pop culture is to maintain a connection to their voters even when there's no election. I think Republicans, especially Republicans who are elected officials, have to understand how important pop culture is as a link to their voting bases. For instance, we should be involving country music musicians in this 2020 effort. We should not be relying on rappers or reality TV stars. Go to the people who already have a base that might go along with your base of voters. Go to people like Blake Shelton who have done very pro-America songs. Use pop culture as a way to keep lines of communication open so that even when we're at the most toxic, extreme, nasty level of politics, there's still something that we can sit around and talk about, which is what The Bachelorette is. Now, I also just happen to love The Bachelorette, but it's something that I use as a tool to keep the line of communication open with especially young women who are not conservative. It's something that can be easily agreed on. We need that. And the fact that President Trump doesn't have that right now makes it a little bit more difficult for him because he's only seen as being political. Using pop culture will allow him to be humanized. It will allow Melania to be humanized. Pretty much all Republicans. By keeping the line of communication open with voters through pop culture, we also look more current. And that matters because when we're talking about policies, people will say, well, maybe they do have an idea of what's going on because they knew who won American Idol. It sounds silly, but it isn't. It's staying current with the times, which is really important for 2020 when you have all these Democrat socialists out there being like, I understand how to win, I know how to win, I care about you, even though it isn't true. We need to maintain our relevancy, and we can do that through attacking pop culture and staying with pop culture, and also using pop culture as a way to keep a conversation open with voters across